I think for me, it's that I may not have like given him Jesus's words to his question at that point, but the next time somebody does that, ask me a question like that, I'm probably going to have a little chuckle inside me and say, Jesus, I remember now. Let's go. So.
Hey everyone, it's Abdu, and welcome to another episode of Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. This is a short series of videos where me and another speaker who does apologetics and evangelism for a living talk about times when we coulda, shoulda, or woulda done it differently, when we were either engaging from the stage or talking to someone one-on-one, and we learn from our mistakes. And the hope is that when you hear our mistakes, you'll learn from our mistakes as well. And with me on Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda is my good friend and colleague, Alycia Wood. Alycia always had questions growing up, and I can assure you that in the many meetings I've been with Alycia, she still has lots of them. It's one of the endearing qualities of Alycia is that she's never satisfied with pat answers. Never satisfied with that. It's one of the things that makes her an excellent apologist. She got her bachelor's in criminal justice and sociology at Robert Wesleyan College. She thereafter discovered apologetics and really got into it, and it changed her life. She also got her master's in social justice from Marygrove College, just down the street from where I'm sitting right now, in fact, here in the Detroit area. And she's done various volunteer stuff all over the world, orphanages, prisons, and shelters for the homeless in countries including Haiti, Honduras, and Dominican Republic. She has spent the last 8 years plus, I would say, doing full-time apologetics and Christian ministry, including and especially evangelism all over the world. And she currently works for the C.S. Lewis Society based in Tampa. So my good friend Alycia, thank you so much for being on Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda.
Thank you. And thank you for this humbling experience of admitting our faults.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody who's been on has absolutely loved the opportunity for whatever reason to say, hey, I blew it, and I can't wait to share with you how I did that. It's been great. It's been really humanizing, too, because people we've followed and looked up to and talked with and read their books, they've all been so forthcoming into the ways that they've fumbled through this thing. There's the only guy that I've ever read who's never made any mistakes is the guy we talk about and lead people to, who is Jesus. So, having had that preamble, let's hear of a time when you coulda, shoulda, or woulda done it differently.
Okay. So it's funny because, oftentimes when you think of coulda, shoulda, woulda, there's so many things that I could say. I could say, I wish I had a better tone with this particular individual, or I wish I had responded differently, or this kind of thing. Or I was really harsh or something like that. And I think it's interesting because I know that you and I have something very much in common, which is we are Q&A junkies. We really like the Q&A time of events. And so for me, that's usually the part that I look forward to. I love being able to hear where people are at. Well, I think when I was thinking about what would I say for coulda, shoulda, woulda, I figured let me go with a time that I feel like I flopped or didn't do as much as I could have on my favorite part of an event, which is Q&A. And so I want to kind of share with you a story where I could have or coulda or shoulda done better or shoulda said this. And I think oftentimes people say to us, Abdu, if you were there, Alycia, or Abdu, you were there when I was talking to this friend, it would have been so much better, and you could have answered it, and you could have helped them to understand God better, and I just flopped. And they kind of assume that, we always get our Q&A answers right, or that we always know what to say. Yeah. But what people don't realize is so often when we get home or the next day, or we're lying in bed that night, we're like, I should have said this. Or wait, why didn't I think of this? Like all this stuff comes to us afterwards about how it would have been better for us to actually...
Every time without fail. Every time.
Exactly. And so I want to share with you just a time when I should have said something better. So I was at a university not too long ago and was speaking on this topic of why isn't God more obvious? It was probably 150 students or so, mixed Christians and non, and they asked me to speak on this topic. And, it's a pretty common topic. Why is it that, God doesn't just show himself as a lightning bolt or stand right in front of us or just, write his name across the sky. I am God, something like that.
Yeah.
And so during the course of the talk, I talk about ways that God does show himself to us. Maybe it's not always in the ways that we want, but he does reveal himself to us in a way that we can still see, okay, there's enough out there for me to look further into this, but enough for me to say, I don't want it. Kind of this delicate balance of the two. And so part of what I do during the talk is I challenge people to wonder if God is revealing himself, then why is it that sometimes we just don't want to believe? Like, is the issue that God isn't showing himself? Or is the issue sometimes that we just don't want it to be true, or we're always going to find reasons to challenge it or to make objections to it? You know, so I share a story of a student I was speaking with years ago who said he wanted proof. And I said, okay, I can give you proof of a healing of a woman who's paralyzed and she started walking. It's all on video. And he was like, no, I'll just explain it away as her brain spontaneously healed her and it wasn't God healing her in that moment. You know, so I kind of tell these people like often people say they want evidence and I give it to them, but then they still find reasons to not believe.
Yeah, they move the goalposts.
It just perpetually moves. Exactly. You move the goalposts. So I want people to really think about themselves. So anyway, we get to time to Q&A. And, you know, various questions come up. But one gentleman who is not a Christian comes to the microphone and he says, you know, I don't understand why Jesus just went to heaven. Like, why didn't he just stay here? Like, why did he die, resurrect, and go to heaven as you taught? It would be so much easier if he stayed here and 2,000 years later, we could see him and we could see, wow, this guy is immortal. Like, he hasn't died yet. Like, that would be such clear evidence that he exists. So why not just do that? And so it was interesting. So I'd said to him, and it was interesting because I'd addressed this somewhat in the talk. Like I used the example of the woman who was paralyzed. But also I talked about how, you know, people saw Jesus raise people from the dead. They saw him walk on water. They saw him heal people and make blind people see. And in other words, they had such good evidence of him and saw him in front of them and they still didn't believe. And eventually he was crucified. And so I said to this young man, I said, you know, I don't really think actually if Jesus was here, it would be any different because I tend to think that I'm more like those people that lived when they did see him, then I'm somehow different. I'm somehow special. I'm somehow going to react differently. And so then I went to this I went to this whole story about Thomas, right? And so, you know, talking about the John 20 story of Thomas and doubting Thomas and how he, you know, he wanted proof, he wanted evidence, and Jesus gave him evidence. And then Jesus says, stop doubting and believe. So in other words, Thomas, you got to stop asking questions. At some point, you got to believe. Just, you got to accept it. So anyways, I feel like, okay, that's good. You know, that was a pretty solid answer for him. Give him some stuff to think about. But it wasn't until later that evening that I realized, wait a minute, that wasn't the end of the story. And so I want to read you the very next verse after the story I shared with him. So Thomas says, my Lord and my God, in response to Jesus. And the very next verse says, then Jesus told him, you believe because you've seen me, but blessed are those who believe without seeing me. And this hit me that evening that Jesus actually directly answered and responded to this gentleman who said, I want to see you. And he directly did. And I just blanked on that part of the response that Jesus gave. I just ended the story early because I'm so used to just, for whatever reason, when I usually speak on it, I'm used to ending it there. And so I was just so frustrated with myself because Jesus literally saying, blessed are those who can actually hear my message, hear this gospel message, hear through the people that are talking about me, sharing this message, and they don't see me. But Thomas, you got to see me, you got all this, but how great it's going to be for those who can believe and don't see me. And so that was my massive facepalm. Like, why did I not think about the very next verse where Jesus is directly speaking to what this guy said?
And I got to tell you, one of the things that I get out of this, and I'm blessed by you even sharing the story with us, is that, and I've said this for a while now, is that the Bible has a way of answering objections thousands of years before anybody brings them. Which is at least a slight indication that maybe somebody who's transcendent and beyond time actually has some level of control of what this book actually has to say. So I love that the scriptures themselves sort of spoke to you saying, hey, if this ever comes up again, I handled it before, Alycia. I think you could just repeat the words. I love that.
Exactly.
But you know what, though? Another lesson, though, that this teaches us is that you can become familiar with the scriptures as you are, as someone who studies them, and that there'll be times when you get sort of roped into a pattern of same old, that the scriptures you love and are familiar with sometimes are a little bit, and it could be just, you had a brain moment, it just didn't occur to you. But then it did later. My guess is you didn't go scouring the scriptures for a better answer. It sounds to me like it just popped into your head. Like, oh my goodness, he said these things later.
Exactly.
But that comes from familiarity with the scriptures. That comes later, and so that reflection is so important. So let me ask you a question. If I were to say, to ask you to say, what is the thing that, you didn't just describe an incident where you forgot something. What is the practical thing you would tell people who are watching or listening that you got from it so that next time you would do it differently? What is a practical thing you would say?
So it's funny, years ago, when I was when I was studying apologetics, somebody said to me, if you want to be good at apologetics and evangelism, do it. Just do it. Get stuck. Get asked a question you don't know the answer to. Feel like your brain is muddled and you don't know what to say. Like, just do it. And you learn out of those experiences. So I think what I would tell people, like, the takeaway is, I bet you I won't forget that the next time. And the reality is when you forget certain things, like you forget, part of a question that you want to say, or you respond in a way you didn't want to respond, like those real life situations, like implant themselves in your brain. And the next time you're ready, the next time you're going to be, better, you're going to be gentler, you're going to be more patient, you're going to listen to the question a bit more before you respond, or you're going to think of these things that you should have added. And so I think for me, it's that I may not have given him Jesus's words to his question at that point, but the next time somebody does that, ask me a question like that, I'm probably going to have a little chuckle inside me and say, Jesus, I remember now. Let's go. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I can probably can't count the number of times I've walked away and said, boy, the Bible literally speaks to that. And I could have just not waxed eloquent and been impressed with me, and instead just said, the Bible says this so many times. So thanks for that reminder to us. Thanks for sharing the story, and thanks for being on Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda, Alycia. It's always great to see you, to hear your voice, to hear you doing ministry like this. Thanks for being on.
No, thank you. And let me know whenever you want me to come back and share my faults with the world. I'm happy to be here for you.
Absolutely. This has been another episode of How to Humble Your Friends in Front of the World. No, but it's been a wonderful time. Thanks again, Alycia. So friends, it's coulda, shoulda, woulda. So remember, there's times when you're going to blow it, but the Lord is going to bring some things to you and say, hey, you could have done it better. My word is pretty good. You should rely on that. And hopefully Alycia's story will give you something to think about and to not beat yourself up over. Because if someone is who does a good a job as Alycia does, has these moments, you will too. But stay in the game. It's worth it. Please do so. We need you. So again, thanks, Alycia. Great to have you on. Friends, it's been Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda.